Hi dear students, welcome to the next video. Today we will see fertilization. It's an embryology topic. We have already done some topics on embryology, introduction and the gametogenesis. If you have not watched, you can watch that. So let's start with fertilization. So before fertilization, let's see the structure of the spermatozoa. It's around 50 micron in length, and mammalian sperm consists of head, neck, midpiece and tail. Head is made of nucleus. Nucleus is condensed in the head region, and a cap, acrosomal cap. Midpiece, which has a central filamentous core with many mitochondria spiraled around it. This is used for ATP production for the journey through the female cervix. The sperm has to pass through the female cervix. Lot of barriers it has to overcome. So the mitochondria gives energy to that, energy for that. It has to pass through the cervix, uterus, up to the uterine tube where it can fertilize the ovum. Head is piriform in shape. Neck contains centriole, a structural framework. Acrosome contains enzymes that help in penetration of the sperm into the ovum during fertilization. So they have a lot of enzymes, proteolytic enzymes that helps to penetrate the ovum. Tail region, a flagellum, also called as flagellum, which executes lashing movements that propels the spermatocyte. Now let's see fertilization. It is a process of fusion of male and female gamete in ampullary region of the fallopian tube. So fertilization occurs in the dilated portion of the fallopian tube called ampullary region. Now the steps are entrance of sperm in the female genital tract. This happens during copulation. Capacitation is a functional maturation of the spermatozoon. So to function better, sperm has to undergo a maturation, and that is called capacitation. The area of the acrosomal cap is also altered, thereby acrosome reaction becomes possible. So acrosomal cap, so there will be little alteration on this so that acrosomal reaction can occur. Acrosomal reaction occurs at this area, which is also required for the penetration of the sperm into the ovum. So the sperm reaches near the ovum. It is trying to pierce the corona radiata of the ovum and penetrating the zona pellucida, fusing with the cell membrane of the ovum, and the nucleus is thrown into the ovum, and that's called fertilization, where the female and the male gamete fuses. Acrosomal reaction, which occurs after binding to the zona pellucida, is induced by zona proteins. So acrosomal reaction occurs when the head of the sperm meets the zona pellucida, and this is induced by some proteins which are seen in the zona pellucida. This reaction culminates release of enzymes which are needed to penetrate zona pellucida, including acrosin and trypsin like substances. So there are some there are some enzymes which is required to penetrate the zona pellucida. So that is produced at this time. So the zona pellucida can be penetrated. There are three steps for fertilization. They are penetration of corona radiata by a sperm. Then corona radiata are the cells which are seen surrounding the ovum. Then penetration of the zona pellucida, that is the which is represented here as a blue color. Then fusion of the oocyte and the sperm cell membrane. So the first step is corona radiata penetration, then the zona pellucida, then the fusion of oocyte and the sperm cell membrane. Now, what is the response of the ovum to fertilization? Cortical and zona reactions. So there are two reactions that occurs in the ovum: cortical reaction and the zona reactions. Metabolic activation of the egg. The egg gets activated. So these are some of the responses of the ovum, where some reactions occurs in the cortical region, and also zona reactions. Zona reactions occurs due to that the another sperm cannot enter into the ovum. So only one sperm can enter into the ovum. Metabolic activation of the egg. So what do you mean by that? Here you should remember that the ovum is arrested in the second meiotic division. So it can get activated, or it can have a mature ovum. Mature ovum is produced only when the sperm enters the ovum. So that is metabolic activation of the egg. Now results of fertilization. Now what happens due to fertilization? Determination of the sex. So here the sex is determined. That means a sperm which has X chromosome, if it fertilizes an ovum is always X. So X plus X, that leads to a female gamete. Female zygote, a female. That kid will be, the child will be female. Whereas if a sperm which has Y chromosome, if that fertilizes egg, now the zygote will have XY. So that is a male child. Restoration of diploid number of chromosomes. Now the sperm and the ovum, they are haploid. So when they unite, that means they are 23. Their chromosome number is 23. Now when they unite, their chromosome number doubles. That becomes 46. That is a diploid cell. Initiation of cleavage. Cleavage is the repeated division that occurs in a zygote. So that immediately starts after the fertilization. So let's see what's cleavage. Now the zygote has reached 2-cell stage. Once it reaches 2-cell stage, so male and female gamete joins to form the zygote, then it is going to divide. Once it reaches 2-cell stage, it undergoes a series of mitotic divisions, increasing the number of cells. Now there are a lot of mitotic division that happens in this, and that leads to increased number of cells here. Now these cells, which become smaller with each cleavage division, are known as blastomeres. Now the cells are going to divide, but as the cell divides, the size of the cell is getting reduced, and these are called as all of this are called as blastomeres. Now approximately 3 days after the fertilization, cells of compacted embryo divide again to form 16-cell stage called morula. Now almost at the third day after the fertilization, cleavage occurs and the cell becomes a 16-cell stage. The zygote becomes 16-cell stage. Here it looks like a mulberry, and that stage is called morula. Now inner cells of the morula constitute inner cell mass, and surrounding cells compose outer cell mass. Now after the morula formation, the next stage is the cells which are going to get arranged. Some cells are going to get arranged at the center, and they are called inner cell mass, where some cells are going to surround the inner cells, and they are called as outer cell mass. The inner cell mass giving rise to tissues of the embryo proper. So the embryo is developing from the inner cell mass, whereas the outer cell mass forms the trophoblast, which later contributes to the formation of placenta. So placenta is formed by the trophoblast, not only from the trophoblast. So trophoblast is actually a fetal component. Placenta is developed from fetal as well as mother's component. So the fetal component for the placenta is the trophoblast, which are the outer cell which are surrounding the inner cell mass. Blastocyst formation. Now what is blastocyst? Now about the time morula enters the uterine cavity. So at the stage of the morula, so just imagine that the sperm is entering into the uterine cavity, into the fallopian tube where the fertilization occurs. Now slowly the zygote is moving from the fallopian tube into the uterus. So as it goes, the changes occurs. The changes in the zygote occurs, as we see now, that it becomes a 16 cell stage, and that is called morula. So when it forms the morula, it is almost near the uterine cavity. That time the fluid begins to penetrate through the zona pellucida. Zona pellucida is still there here. So the fluid is going to enter into the zygote, penetrating the zona pellucida into the intercellular spaces of the inner cell mass. Gradually intercellular spaces, so initially lot of spaces appears into which fluid accumulate. Slowly these spaces becomes confluent, it becomes a single cavity, and finally this cavity is called blastocele. So blastocele forms here. It is a single cavity here which is formed, and at this stage the embryo is called blastocyst. So blastocyst, and this cavity is blastocele. Now implantation. Now we have seen that the zona pellucida is present here in this stage, but on to the next stage the zona pellucida is almost disappearing. So when the zona pellucida disappears, which allows the implantation to begin. So zona pellucida is the one which prevents the zygote to get implant to nearby structures. If the zona pellucida disappears at this stage, it can get implanted into the fallopian tube or into the sides of the uterus, but that does not occur. Usually it occurs when the zygote reaches the the uterus. When the zona pellucida disappears, the zygote implants. So in human, trophoblastic cells or the embryoblast pole begin to penetrate between the epithelial cells of the uterine mucosa on about 6th day. So implantation occurs during the 6th day after fertilization. So the trophoblastic cells, now let's see here, this is the trophoblast. So trophoblast cells which are near the inner cell mass, they try to penetrate the epithelium of the uterus, the uterine mucosa, which is well flourished here, because now uterus is in the secretory phase and it tries to penetrate into the uterus, and that is called implantation. Now what is the status of the uterus at the time of implantation? Now the wall of the uterus consists of 3 layers generally, which has endometrium, which is the inner layer, mucosa, myometrium is the muscle made of smooth muscle, perimetrium, which is seen outside, which is the peritoneal covering seen on the outer aspect. Now if fertilization does occur, the endometrium assists in implantation, because endometrium is in the secretory phase and it can assist in the implantation, also forming the placenta. So I said placenta is formed partly by the mother's in the uterus and partly by the trophoblast of the developing embryo. Now at the 8th day of development, blastocyst is partly embedded in the endometrial stroma. So inner cell mass can be seen trophoblast. In the area of the embryoblast, see here, the trophoblast has differentiated into 2 layers. Now in this area where implantation, this is the implantation site, trophoblast is going to get differentiated into 2 layers. Inner cell layer, inner layer of non-nucleated cells, inner layer of mononucleated cells called cytotrophoblast, and the outer layer is called syncytio trophoblast. Here the cells are peculiar here, it is multinucleated zone without cell boundaries. They have the property to penetrate nearby structures. So the syncytial trophoblast is going to penetrate the uterine endometrium. Now this is a case called a condition called ectopic pregnancy. Ectopic pregnancy, also called as extrauterine pregnancy, is when a fertilized egg grows outside a woman's uterus, somewhere else in her belly. So here the implantation does not occur in the uterus, it occurs anywhere else. So we have discussed that zona pellucida is very important. If the zona pellucida is disappearing, the implantation can occur anywhere, like we have seen here. Zona pellucida, it is present here, but if it is disappearing, it can implant. Suppose the fallopian tube has a tumor or any growth or any stricture, and the developing embryo that cannot reach here. So almost the 8th day, the changes occur in the embryo and the zona pellucida disappears and the implantation occurs in the fallopian tube. So it can be due to any issues with the fallopian tube. So this is a life threatening condition, bleeding, and needs medical care right away. In more than 90% of the cases, the egg implants in the fallopian tube. This is called tubal pregnancy. This is life threatening because the lady will not know that the implantation occurred in the fallopian tube until unless the uterine tube ruptures and the contents will be flowing into the peritoneum. That is little risky condition. So it is very important that the initial scanning is done on time, so that you can understand whether the pregnancy, whether the implantation has occurred in the uterus. Now let's see the formation of embryonic disc. Now the cells of the inner cell mass of the embryoblast also differentiate into two layers. So here some differentiation of embryoblast can be seen. A layer of cuboidal to squamous cells adjacent to blastocyst cavity, known as hypoblast cells, hypoblast layer, and a layer of columnar cells opposite to the blastocyst cavity, epiblast layer. So there are two types of cells, or the embryoblast, the inner cell mass is differentiating into squamous cells, hypoblast, and columnar cells, epiblast. And at this stage, this is called the embryonic disc or the bilaminar disc, because there are two types of cells here. Now let's see the formation of amniotic cavity. Soon amniotic or amniogenic cells, called as amnioblast, separate from the epiblast. So here the amniogenic cells getting separated from the epiblast and form the amnion, which encloses the amniotic cavity. The epiblast cells, from the epiblast cells, the amniotic cells, amniogenic cells arises. They lines the inner aspect of the trophoblast and they meet onto the other side, and thus it creates a cavity above the epiblast below the amniogenic cells, and this cavity is called amniotic cavity. Amniotic cavity is here. Again, in this diagram shows that the epiblast, the hypoblast, the cells from the epiblast forms the amniogenic layer and forming the amniotic cavity. Amniotic cavity will enlarge. Now similarly, another cavity is appearing here. Let's see how it is forming. Now the embryonic disc gives rise to the germ layers. Now this disc will give rise to the germ layers. Now the germ layers are of three types: ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. We will see how this two-layered disc is going to give rise to the three-layer disc or three germ layers. Now the hypoblast, that is forming the roof of the blastocyst cavity, and it forms a membrane called Husserl's membrane. Husserl's membrane is formed by the hypoblast. Hypoblast, some cells from the hypoblast arises, squamous cells, that is going to line the inner aspect of the trophoblast and meets onto the other side. And now this layer which are derived, these cells which are derived from the hypoblast are called as Husserl's membrane. The embryonic disc now lies between amniotic cavity and the primary yolk sac. Now, because of the Husserl's membrane here, a cavity appears in this area, and that is called primary yolk sac. Now we have primary yolk sac, we have amniotic cavity, and the embryonic disc. Now the embryonic disc, the two-layered, the bilaminar embryonic disc is between the amniotic cavity and the yolk sac. Now the cells from the trophoblast forms a layer of connective tissue called extra-embryonic mesoderm. So after forming extra-embryonic mesoderm, which is here, which is going to surround amnion and the primary yolk sac. Now as the amnion, embryonic disc and the primary umbilical vesicle form isolated cavities which are called lacunae appearing in the syncytio trophoblast. So while all these changes are happening here, that there is extra embryonic mesoderm is forming, on the periphery some spaces are going to appear in the syncytio trophoblast and they are called as lacunae. So these blue dotted lines are, or blue areas are, lacunae. Now syncytio trophoblast has the capability to erode the maternal endometrium or the uterine endometrium. So when they erode the uterine endometrium, they erode the blood vessels also. Now when they erode the blood vessels, the blood in the vessels, they come out and now they will occupy the space which are formed in the syncytio trophoblast. So that is the maternal blood is going to occupy this area, as you can see here. So this is the primordial uteroplacental circulation. So we are establishing now the on the periphery, the syncytio trophoblast, along with the blood vessels, the lacunae, it is going to establish a primordial uteroplacental circulation, or we are seeing the development of placenta. Now as the conceptus implants, so when the embryo is implanting, endometrial connective tissue cells undergo transformation called decidual reaction. Now when the embryo implants to the endometrium, the cells in the endometrium are actually called as decidual cells because the cell swells and they accumulate a lot of glycogen lipid. I'm talking about the endometrial cells in the uterus, and they are called as decidual cells, and decidual cells will undergo some changes when the implantation occurs, and that's called decidual reaction. Now the lacunar networks particularly obvious around the embryonic pole. So they are mainly seen in the embryonic pole. Embryonic pole is here, this area, are the primordia of the intervillous spaces of the placenta. So these lacunae are the intervillous space, the primordia of the intervillous space. So when you see the placenta is formed of villi. There are a lot of villi in the placenta. Between the villi there are some gaps, and these gaps are actually formed, or the gaps are actually these lacunae. So on either side of one lacunae the villi arises. So this is lacunae. So here one villi arises, this side also one villi arises. Similarly here one villi arises, on this side villi arises. So this Lacunar spaces are the primordia for the intervillous space. That is the space between the villi which are going to form here to make the placenta. Now let's see some other things here. Now, as the changes occur in the trophoblast and the endometrium, the extraembryonic mesoderm increases. So the extraembryonic mesoderm that is going to increase in amount, and isolated extraembryonic coelomic spaces appear within it. As the extraembryonic mesoderm increases, the trophoblast, so it is arising from the trophoblast and covering the amnion, the amniotic cavity, and the primary yolk sac. So extraembryonic mesoderm is increasing its size, but as they increase in the size, small spaces occupy in this space in this area, and they are called extraembryonic coelomic spaces. Now initially they are seen in different areas in the extraembryonic mesoderm, but later they unite and to form a big cavity in the extraembryonic mesoderm, and that's called extraembryonic coelom. So here the spaces have joined and forming a big cavity. Now the cavity size is so big that the extraembryonic mesoderm is divided into two parts. This part and the other part which is related to the cytotrophoblast of the trophoblast layer. So, but again, very well notice that the extraembryonic coelom or extraembryonic cavity is not extending to some part of the extraembryonic mesoderm on either side. That part is called connecting stalk. Again, the extraembryonic coelom is formed dividing the extraembryonic mesoderm into two, the outer aspect, the outer one, and the inner one. Now, the extraembryonic coelom splits the extraembryonic mesoderm into two layers. It's extraembryonic somatopleuric mesoderm, which is also called as parietal extraembryonic mesoderm, and the other one, extraembryonic splachnopluric mesoderm, which is surrounding the primary yolk sac, whereas the extraembryonic somatopleuric mesoderm, which is lining the trophoblast. So this is extraembryonic somatopleuric, extraembryonic splachnopluric, covering the primary yolk sac. Now, as the extraembryonic coelom forms, the primary umbilical vesicle decreases in size, and a small secondary vesicle forms. So the primary umbilical vesicle or primary yolk sac is also called as primary umbilical vesicle. It decreases its size. As you can see, the primary yolk sac, which was quite big in the initial period, some part of it is getting removed from it, as here, and then it is called as secondary yolk sac. The end of the second week, so we are in second week, the end of the second week is characterized by appearance of primary chorionic villi. So now at the end of second week, the placenta formation begins, already started, and formation of primary chorionic villi are going to form. Now I said before that the placenta is having a lot of villi. So we are seeing the formation of the villi, or we are seeing the formation of placenta. So primary chorionic villi are going to start here, as we can see here on the periphery of the trophoblast, cytotrophoblast. Some elevations appear, and these elevations are called as primary chorionic villi, and the primary chorionic villi is forming a bulging here. The proliferation of cytotrophoblastic cells produces cellular extensions that grow into syncytial trophoblast. Now, these elevations which are called as a primary chorionic villi, are the growth of the cytotrophoblast, and that extends into syncytiotrophoblast, because syncytiotrophoblast is seen outside, and we have seen that syncytiotrophoblast is corroding the blood vessels and the lacunae are formed. So between the two lacunae, you can see that the villi is formed, villi is extending. Cellular projections form primary chorionic villi, the first stage in development of chorionic villi of the placenta. So we are seeing the formation of chorionic villi. So this is the beginning. Let's see what happens in detail. So this diagrams just to make you understand that we have extra embryonic coelom dividing the extra embryonic mesoderm into splachnopleuric extra embryonic mesoderm and somatopleuric extra embryonic mesoderm. Splachnopleuric because it is going to form mesoderm for the viscera, whereas somatopleuric it is also going to form the basis of the mesoderm for the body wall. Somatopleuric. Let's see how it is going to form the viscera, and let's see how it is going to form the body wall. Okay, coming back to the placenta again, let's understand this diagram. So these are different diagrams which is showing the different layers of or different stages of the chorionic villi formation. The primary chorionic villi, secondary, and the tertiary, which is called as a mature. Now we need to understand that this is the fetal side and this is the mother side, and this is cytotrophoblast and syncytiotrophoblast, and the lacunae where the syncytiotrophoblast has some spaces. Lacunae are the spaces in the syncytiotrophoblast which is filled with blood, mother's blood. Now the cytotrophoblast starts to grow into syncytiotrophoblast, that is called the primary chorionic villi. Okay, early in the third week, so let's see in the third week, almost in the third week, mesenchyme grows into this primary villi, forming a core of mesenchymal tissue. Now extra embryonic mesoderm is present deep to cytotrophoblast. Let's see this diagram, you can understand better. See, this is cytotrophoblast and this is syncytiotrophoblast, and this is extra embryonic mesoderm or the mesenchyme. Now we are seeing the same diagram in different view. Cytotrophoblast, extra embryonic mesoderm, syncytiotrophoblast. So primary villi we already saw. Now the extra embryonic mesoderm, which is called as a mesenchyme, also called as a mesenchyme. Mesenchyme grows into this projection. This projection is formed by the cytotrophoblast, and at this stage, when the mesenchyme grows into this stage is called secondary chorionic villi. Secondary chorionic villi, and mesoderm, usually the blood vessels develops in the mesoderm. Okay, so that's what you're going to see. The next stage, the blood vessels are going to differentiate, okay, into capillaries, and blood cells are also going to form. So this is on the fetal side, isn't it? Yes, this is the fetal side because we are talking about this area. So cytotrophoblast, syncytiotrophoblast, and extra embryonic mesoderm. So in the fetal side, the blood vessels are forming, and these blood vessels will occupy the mesenchyme, right? And this stage it is called tertiary chorionic villi. So we are seeing stages. As you can see that this is the syncytiotrophoblast and cytotrophoblast invaginate into syncytiotrophoblast, forming the primary chorionic villi. Then the extra embryonic mesoderm enters secondary chorionic villi. Blood vessels are differentiating, and that forms the tertiary chorionic villi. Okay. Now they are called the tertiary chorionic villi when blood vessels are visible in them. The chorionic villi are the essential elements of placenta. So what we have seen now here is the formation of placenta, the tertiary villi, the chorionic villi of the placenta. Now there is something called folding. Now the embryo, it is in the two laminar disc. Embryo folds craniocaudally and laterally. So it can fold craniocaudally, from cranial to the caudal end, and laterally also. Now, after the folding, the connecting stalk, which was it is carried to ventral aspect of embryo and transformed to umbilical cord. Now, connecting stalk. So let's see now let's define ventral and dorsal aspect of the embryo in this diagram. So this is the ventral aspect of the embryo, this side, this area, ventral aspect. This is the dorsal aspect of the embryo. Now the connecting stalk is present on the dorsal aspect, but now it is going to get formed. This area or this part, the embryo is going to fold. So folding is a complicated mechanism that we can discuss if you want in detail later. So after the folding, so because of the effect of the folding, the connecting stalk which is there in the dorsal aspect comes to the ventral aspect, as you can see here. It comes to the ventral aspect. So this is the dorsal aspect of the embryo, dorsal aspect. Now it is in the ventral aspect. It was before in the dorsal aspect, and later the connecting stalk transforms into umbilical cord. Umbilical cord, it is connecting the placenta to the developing fetus. Now we have seen that we have the dorsal aspect of the embryo and the ventral aspect of the embryo. Now we need to define exactly which is the cranial side, which is the caudal side, which is the head region, which is the tail region. So let's define that. So hypoplastic cells in a localized area are now columnar. So hypoplast cells are here. Now they are usually squamous cells, but they become columnar to form a thickened circular area called precaudal plate. So development of precaudal plate is appearing here in the hypoblast. Hypoblast is seen ventrally, and which indicates the future site of mouth. So when the precaudal plate is appearing, and this is going to change into mouth later. So this denotes the cranial end of the embryo. So for example, if the precaudal plate is appearing here, we can say that this is the cranial end. If it is appearing here, we can say that this is the cranial end, which indicates the future mouth and an important organizer of the head region. Now, up to now we have seen that we have the two-layer disc, bilaminar disc. Now we are going to see from 2-layer to 3-layer. So formation of germ layers and early tissue and organ differentiation. This happens in the 3rd week. So 3rd week is a period called organogenesis, because most of the organs are going to develop in this. This is very crucial. Any anomalies in this time can lead to congenital anomalies in the fetus. Let's see. So rapid development of the embryo from embryonic disc during the 3rd week is characterized by appearance of primitive streak. Now we are going to see some new things here. Primitive streak, development of notochord, differentiation of 3 germ layers. So let's see these things in detail. Now at this stage, there is going to be a rapid development of the embryo, along with some other features. So let's see these things one by one. Appearance of primitive streak. Now where the primitive streak is going to appear. So this diagram shows that it is appearing on the dorsal aspect. Dorsal aspect, that is facing the epiblast, right? Epiblastic region. And the amniotic cavity can be seen yolk sac below, yolk sac. Another diagram, ectoderm. So here it is shown as ectoderm. We will see how it is formed. This is the dorsal aspect and the ventral aspect. Dorsal and ventral aspect. Okay, we will see in detail. So now a new term that is called gastrulation. Gastrulation is nothing but it's a formation of the germ layer. Germ layer. So from 2-layer to 3-layer. I mentioned already that germ layers are 3: ecto, endo, and mesoderm. Gastrulation is the formative process by which 3 germ layers, which are precursors of all the embryonic tissue and axial orientation, are established in the embryo. So from the 2-layer to the 3 layers. Now during gastrulation, the bilaminar embryonic disc is converted into a trilaminar embryonic disc, where this is the diagram showing the development of the embryo from the beginning. Inner cell mass forming the bilaminar disc having the amniotic cavity, then later formation of extraembryonic mesoderm, formation of amniotic cavity, the yolk sac, then the third layer which is appearing between these 2 layers, and that is what is called the gastrulation. Let's see that. So before that we have to see the primitive streak. Now at the beginning of 3rd week, an opacity formed by thickened linear band of epiblast, and that is called primitive streak. So opacity is going to appear in the epiblast. So this is the bilaminar disc where the epiblast is seen. We are seeing from superior, we are seeing a superior view where the epiblast is going to have some special cells or the thickening of that area, and that they are called the primitive streak. Appears caudally in the median plane. So it is appearing in the median plane, mostly towards the caudal aspect. This area is a cranial aspect because the precaudal plate is formed here in the hypoblast. Okay, hypoblast is on the other side. We cannot see that. Hypoblast is on the other side. What we are seeing here is a superior view where you can see the epiblast. So on the dorsal area, primitive streak appears. As the streak elongates, so there you are going to get some elevations there. That is called the primitive streak. Now this streak elongates by adding of cells to its caudal end. Its cranial end proliferates to form primitive node. So these cells or these primitive streak, they elongate by adding cells to the caudal end. So they just move to the caudal end, whereas the cranial end is going to have a big node structure, and that is called primitive node enlargement. And this is the picture where we can see that the primitive streak is formed, and primitive streak initially they are elevated, then slowly the primitive streak will have a primitive groove. Groove appears here, and the primitive node can be seen here. Anyway, I will talk about that later. So let's think that now the primitive streak is formed in the epiblast, which is seen on the caudal aspect, and at the cranial end of it enlargement forms, that is primitive node. That's what. So currently a narrow groove appears in the primitive streak, and that is called a primitive groove. So all of this area is primitive streak, and a small groove in the center, that is primitive groove, that is continuous with a small depression in the primitive node. At the same time we have primitive node, there is a depression in the primitive node, that is called a primitive pit. So initially a primitive streak appears, which are elevations, and primitive node appears. Later primitive groove appears in the primitive streak. It continues with the primitive pit that is seen on the primitive node. So primitive node can be seen. This is the cranial end. Primitive node can be seen. Now cells of the epiblast is here, epiblast, migrate towards primitive streak. So they migrate, they slowly start moving from the epiblast to the primitive streak. Upon arrival in the region of the streak, they become flask shaped. So the cells changes its shape. If they were columnar, they become flask shaped, detach from the epiblast. Say they just get removed from the epiblast and they slip into the primitive streak, where we have a primitive groove also. So it just slips into the primitive groove, as here the cells are slipping from the epiblast. This inward movement is called invagination. So the movement of the epiblast cells to the primitive streak and slipping it from away from the epiblast, and that is called invagination. Once the cells have invaginated, some displaces the hypoblast. Some of the cells now which are derived from the epiblast, which passes through the primitive streak, they are going to replace the hypoblast. Hypoblast is here, hypoblast, and this is the epiblast. So some of the cells are getting removed, hypoblast cells, and now newly formed cells are called the endoderm. Now from where the endoderm is coming? Endoderm is coming from the epiblast, and others come to lie between the epiblast and newly created endoderm to form mesoderm. Now some of the cells will remain in between the epiblast and the newly formed endoderm here. These cells are called, or these layer are going to form the mesoderm. So we have seen now two fates of the epiblast here. Some of the epiblast that replaces the hypoblast to form the endoderm. Some of them will occupy between epiblast and the endoderm, and they are called mesoderm. So here epiblast, the endoderm, mesoderm is formed. Now what is remaining? The ectoderm. We'll see what is ectoderm. Now the cells that is remaining in the epiblast are called ectoderm. So we can say that the cells move from the epiblast, reaches the hypoblast, replaces the hypoblast to form the endoderm. Some cells occupies the space or the area between the epiblast and the endoderm, called the mesoderm. Now whatever the cells which are remaining in the epiblast after all this process, and then they are called as ectoderm. So we have three layers now: ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. Now gastrulation itself may be disrupted by genetic abnormalities or due to toxic insults. So due to toxic insults or any genetic abnormalities, the gastrulation can be interrupted. So this is a condition where the gastrulation has not occurred properly, and this is called caudal dysgenesis cyrinomilia. Caudal dysgenesis or cyrinomilia. And it is in this case insufficient mesoderm is formed in the caudalmost region of embryo. So in the lower part of the embryo, the mesoderm is not well distributed. This condition is called cyrinomilia, where you can see the limbs are fused. Now embryonic mesoderm, now we can see the three layers: ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. Embryonic mesoderm giving rise to skeletal muscles, blood cells. I said blood cells can form, blood vessels can form in the mesoderm, lining the blood vessels lining. So if you see the blood vessels, there are different cells which are lining the blood vessels, so they are formed from mesoderm. All visceral smooth muscular cords, smooth muscles, serosal lining of all body cavities like peritoneum, pleura, ducts and organs of reproductive excretory system. Ducts of reproductive system like fallopian tube, vas deferens, excretory system, ducts of excretory system like ureter, and most of the cardiovascular system. So the heart and the vessels. Now in the trunk, it is the source of all connective tissue, including cartilage, bones, tendons, ligaments, dermis. Dermis is a part of the skin, stroma of the internal organs. So dermis is formed from the mesoderm, whereas the epidermis is going to get formed from ectoderm. So skin has got two sources of origin: epidermis from ectoderm, dermis from mesoderm. Let's see the embryonic ectoderm. Give rise to epidermis, as I said before, central and peripheral nervous system. So the nervous system is derived from the ectoderm. eye, inner ear. So inner ear is derived. Neural crest cells, they are some modified cells, and to many connective tissues of the head. Now the endoderm is the source of all the epithelial linings of respiratory and alimentary tracts. So the epithelial lining, for example, the respiratory epithelium and digestive epithelium. Usually digestive epithelium are columnar cells, so they are derived from the endoderm, including the glands opening into gastrointestinal tract and the glandular cells associated organs, cells of associated organs such as liver and pancreas. Now here we should understand one fact, that is, even though I said that the liver, the glandular portion, the glandular cells of the liver is developing from the endoderm, but when you look at the connective tissue component of the liver, that is derived from mesoderm. So an organ, a single organ can have origin from, some of the parts of it can originate from endoderm, some of them can originate from mesoderm. So that's what. Another example is skin. Skin has two layers, epidermis and dermis. Epidermis is derived from ectoderm, whereas dermis is derived from mesoderm. Now another thing that is developing here is notochord. So how the notochord is developing here? Some mesenchymal cells ingress through the primitive node, migrate cranially from primitive node up to the caudal end of precaudal plate, forming a median cellular cord called notochord. So a dorsal view can be seen where the primitive the primitive streak can be seen and the primitive node. From here some of the cells, they ingress through the primitive node and they move cranially up to the precaudal plate. Precaudal plate is the area where the future mouth is going to derive. The buccopharyngeal membrane, everything is related to the precaudal plate, which is seen on the endoderm. So this yellow color is endoderm. So up to here it extends, these cells, and they later thickens and they forms a notochord. Notochord process, it also forms notochordal process later. Anyway, notochordal process, the notochord is nothing to do with the vertebra formation, but in some animals it might be forming vertebra, but not in humans. In humans this degenerates, but some part of the notochord remains. Now another section, this section where the developing embryo can be seen, amniotic cavity, yolk sac, the ectoderm, endoderm, and the mesoderm is developing, and the notochordal process can be seen developing at the center of it. Now as I said, notochord regenerates as the bodies of the vertebra form, but small portion of it presents as nucleus pulposus of each intervertebral disc. So between the vertebra there are intervertebral disc. So inside the intervertebral disc there is a jelly-like substance called nucleus pulposus, which is a remnant of the notochord. So the notochordal formation or notochord process formation can be seen ectoderm, endoderm, and the mesoderm, and it forms a notochord like this. At the same time, the intermediate mesoderm, the mesoderm, which is between ectoderm and the endoderm, that differentiates into some other type of mesoderm, like paraxial mesoderm, intermediate mesoderm, and lateral plate mesoderm. So here the mesoderm which is dividing, this mesoderm is called intraembryonic mesoderm. We have seen extraembryonic mesoderm, that is derived from the cytotrophoblast. This is intraembryonic mesoderm, which differentiate into three on either side, into paraxial, which is near to the axis, para means near, intermediate mesoderm lateral to that, then most laterally lateral plate mesoderm is also formed. Later paraxial mesoderm give rise to the somites, and the intermediate mesoderm will give rise to urogenital organs. Lateral plate mesoderm again will divide into two, that's later, we will see that later. So right now the notochord is going to disappear in humans, some part will be remaining as nucleus pulposus. The developing notochord, so this is another diagram where the notochord development can be seen. Ectoderm, mesoderm and the endoderm. Now the folding procedure also occurs here, folding process also occurs. So the developing notochord induces, so the notochord is here, induces overlying embryonic ectoderm to thicken and form neural plate. So notochord, it initiates or it stimulates the ectoderm to produce neural plate. Neural plate is a structure which is going to give rise to the nervous system.